Hi there, my name is Kaya Hicks, and this is my presentation. I chose the film World War Z. This was produced by Brad Pitt, Dee Dee Gardner, Jeremy Kleiner, and Ian Bryce, directed by Mark Forrester, and released on June 21st, 2013. A little overview of this movie, or this film, was actually based on a 2006 novel by Max Brooks. And this movie is based off a fictional side of war on zombies. Basically, this essentially starts out as a family stuck in traffic. The man, Jeremy Lane, is a UN investigator, and his family gets stuck in traffic like any normal day until chaos breaks out. People are running, screaming, cars are honking, people are starting to act erratic, not normal behavior, they're not starting to look normal, they're starting to bite others, and it's just a crazy little scene going on. Basically what happens throughout this is a plague goes around throughout a virus that transitions, normal healthy people into a zombie, essentially. What happens is another person bites another person who has the virus, and they end up turning into a zombie. Throughout this movie, the whole point is to try and find the pathogen that can create a cure, and to also find the source of this virus. Some of the characters we'll see in this is Gary Lane. He is the main character, and his wife Meryl, and their daughter Constance and Rachel. Gary befriends a virologist who tries to assist them into finding the source of the virus, and he unfortunately dies partially through this movie. His name is Andrew. And then Gary also befriends a man named Segan, and he is an Iranian soldier. And they basically go throughout this entire film together and try to, fight zombies, fight for survival, find a cure, and do what needs to benefit them and their family to get to the point that helps humanity. Bioethical dilemmas, dehumanization of infected people. We see this throughout the movie. People who are infected with the virus, people who are injured, people who just aren't well, are kind of left behind. They aren't taken care of. At the time, they didn't have a vaccine or anything that created a cure, essentially, for those who were affected. So oftentimes we would see these people being murdered and having their rights taken away from them, whether it was using them for personal gain, experiments, whatever is needed. Another bioethical dilemma was individual rights, kind of tying in with the dehumanization of infected people. They're still alive, yet they are infected. However, it's essential, like, they don't have any rights. They're considered viral, they cannot be around people, they cannot be trusted, so they are usually killed. Moral principles are also another bioethical dilemma I decided to put in here, because in a plague, people tend to make a lot of choices, and a lot of those can go against our moral code, I would say. You're normally not going to be killing people, and however, you would have to start killing people in this type of situation due to survival. Survival of the fittest. A lot of times people tend to just be reluctant into helping one another to find the one cure, and instead they kind of divide into groups and almost work against each other and think each other as enemies all the time. And this can create a lot of moral principle issues. One theme I decided to choose for my first one is benefits, and this is to act in a way that benefits others. So within this film, we commonly see them trying to search for a cure of the virus and its origin of the plague. However, it took one person to notice that those who are infected, well, not infected, but like injured or ill, the zombies tend to ignore them. They could walk right past them and the zombies wouldn't be like attracted to them. They wouldn't want to try to go after them or anything because they consider them not a good enough source of a person to feed off of because they're injured. And because of this, they were actually able to try to discover a pathogen that allows people to inject in themselves to kind of have a viral infection to them, so it kind of put zombies off. This was actually shown when Gary was able to collect the pathogen and he was blocked in the hallway by another zombie, and he decided to inject himself to test this theory, and his theory was correct. This would be kind of considered for the greater good. He had to make a lot of sacrifices of killing infected people, killing zombies, putting friends in risk in order to try to find this pathogen, and also losing people on the way that he did care about. You know, in these type of situations, benefits is almost for the greater good. You never know what you're doing is actually going to be helpful or if it's actually just not ethically okay. For my second theme, I chose non-maleficence, is to do no harm. In this film, this demonstrates as well as we could think that dehumanizing zombies to be bad or good. We know that these zombies are people, essentially. However, they're not dead, but they are controlled by a virus. We could think that killing them, experimenting, or using them for a personal gain is good, and we should be doing this. However, this is causing harm. You know, it does take the rights away from the infected person. It does also take away their right to die. You know, essentially we would obviously kill a zombie to try to protect our loved one. I mean, these viruses cannot make them act normally, control themselves, or not harm you. So you are trying to protect yourself, and essentially you're trying to do no harm by killing them. I understand it, but I also could see how this could be an ethical issue because these people are essentially dead. They are still living human beings with the virus. A summary is basically this film is a good example of showing ethical dilemmas during an apocalypse. However, how truly ethical can things be during an apocalypse? That was one thing I kept asking to myself because, you know, when it comes to infected people, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, you could possibly be able to cut off a limb to try to save them, but they would also have to agree to that. And if they don't agree to that, then you start chopping their leg off. You know, that's against it creates a lot of ethical issues. So I thought this movie would be a good example of that. And then my references, and this is it.